This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
All right, we're almost ready here.
Pretty much. Never done anything quite like this before, though.
Yeah, let me help you out with the tank and the goggles.
Hey, gang. I'll be right down.
Okay, I'm almost set.
I gotta say, those flippers are pretty snazzy.
Well, Lily helped me pick out matching gear. You know I have zero fashion sense.
Well, alrighty, let's get ready to... Okay, Bob? Why is Jerry dressed in fluorescent scuba gear?
Well, we talked about doing Forbidden Lands tonight, and I told him it was going to be a deep dive episode, and I think there may have been some miscommunication.
And with my breathing issues, I decided I wasn't taking any chances.
And you didn't talk him out of this?
Nope.
What do you think? Snazzy.
Yeah. Sure, next time we do a deep dive, let's do more swim trunks and less Speedo.
I had to match Bob.
I got one for you too, Phil.
No. Not even if it's warmer.
And with that, welcome to the 423rd episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast. As you said in the intro, tonight we're going to take a deep dive into Forbidden Lands role-playing game, discussing the mechanics, the characters, stories, and what makes this game fun and different. Along the way, we'll take comments, suggestions, and questions from the Slack room for life before jumping into the after show. But first, my name is Jerry.
My name is Phil, and I will remain always a trunks guy.
Yes,
Trunks for life. And I am Old Man Logan, of course. No Speedos for me either. Just not happening.
Yeah,
it's fun for a gag, but no banana hammock.
I think Drew Carey said it best. Nobody wants to see a pair wearing a rubber band. It's not good on me. So,
yeah. All right. And with that, you know what time it is. It's time for our temperature check.
Yes.
Got to make sure we're all kosher before we run into the house misdirected here and share space. So, Phil, how you feeling?
I'm fucking cold.
Yeah, especially in your basement.
Yeah, let's just so that we're clear, we've reached February in Buffalo, which is easily the coldest part of the winter in Buffalo. We're into the low teen single digit kind of days right now.
yes.
And you all, not all you who are listening, but Bob and Jerry have been to my house before. To game in the basement in February, and it is not warm, and without extra bodies in here, is not going to get warm.
It's like fucking Hoth cold down there.
Yeah. So I'm wearing, despite the fact that we're on cameras, I'm keeping my hood of my sweatshirt on, and I have a blanket on my lap, just to try to stay warm through the duration of the show. Okay, so besides my temperature, which is cold, I am otherwise physically fine. Mentally, I am tired. I will apologize. I'm the reason we didn't broadcast last week. My work stuff got super busy last week. It's not that it's less busy. I made a real concerted effort last week to let nothing slip, no matter how long I had to work every day. So I crushed a ton of work, but sadly it meant that I had nothing left in the tank. In fact, I worked till like 7-something last Tuesday, but I powered through the week and got everything on track, and I'm now keeping all those plates spinning. So I'm super busy at work, and it's going to be like this for the next, I don't know, when summer? Like it'll be really intense like until April, and then it'll just be like slightly less intense until June or July, and then I think I will get some sort of reprieve, I hope.
There you go.
So anyway, it's just I'm tired, mentally tired from just managing I've got a lot of moving parts. I got a lot of moving parts going every day now, so I'm just spending a lot of time kind of keeping them all moving, not letting anything drop. Anyway,
Fair.
I guess that's okay, right? Like, still locked down, still healthy. I'll talk about it when we get to the conversation corner, but am probably going to be, I shouldn't say am, will be eligible to get on the vaccine list starting this weekend.
Yep, me too.
So
Cool.
I'm kind of excited about that. We'll talk about that more when we get to the conversation corner.
All right.
So I'm good. I'm good. Bob, how about you?
I am mentally pretty good. Physically, I'm a little tired today, and my neck's been cranky the last couple of days. So I've been doing a lot of stretching exercises and pain management things. If it bothers me tomorrow, I may do another gummy experiment.
Stretching for the bourbon.
Yeah, stretching for the bourbon. But yeah, otherwise I'm not bad. I'm in pretty good shape. Jerry, how about you?
I'm physically I'm where I normally am, which is I'm in decent shape. I'm lots of lung problems because of the up and down temperatures, but that's easily maintained. Actually been getting some decent sleep lately. Been going to bed a little bit earlier, so I'm feeling better. Mentally pretty good. We're in the middle of tax season now, so at my business I've got paperwork on top of paperwork on top of paperwork. So it's been a little mind numbing some days at work. You just get up and walk around, but that's not bad. So that's pretty much it.
Speaking of sleep, I out of the last 5 days, I think it was 5 or 6 days, I had 2 of my best sleep days according to the Fitbit sleep score.
Yep.
Which I was baffled because the one night I thought I tossed and turned a lot, and apparently I didn't. So, yay, sleep!
I love you too with your I'm getting great sleep, whatever.
Phil, you never sleep anyway, so it's not like it's anything different.
Google the phrase revenge procrastination.
Yeah.
That is
that is a thing.
That's me to a T.
Well, the difference is instead of staying up till 1 or 2 in the morning now, I'm going to bed between midnight and 1.
Yeah.
And that extra hour of sleep is making a difference.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'd be making an extra hour of difference if I could get there, but I'm averaging 2:30 is my.
Well, hopefully we can get to a place where you can change that.
So.
Yeah.
All right.
At 6 in the morning, so there we go.
Now that we're in the house, let's do the thing where we talk about one thing. And I will start off by saying that I decided yesterday, for whatever reason, I wanted to watch something and I wasn't in the mood for something new. And I was like, you know what? I was looking at the Netflix queue and I said, Enter the Dragon. Yeah, Enter the Dragon. So I have recently rewatched that. And let me just say that Bruce Lee was the fucking badass. He was the baddest motherfucker in the land. And I miss his ass. I wish he would have lasted a lot longer. Because, just ridiculous how good he was.
That movie's so good.
I need to go and find a bunch of other stuff of his that I still haven't seen because it's hard to find for whatever reason. But
I love that movie, but unfortunately I had seen Kentucky Fried Movie years before I saw that. And I saw Kentucky Fried Movie multiple times before I saw that. So, which has a 15-minute long shot-for-shot parody of Enter the Dragon in it. So as much as I love Enter the Dragon, every time I see it, I giggle a little bit because I saw the parody first.
It got tainted.
It doesn't take anything away from it. It actually makes me appreciate it more because I can see how masterful it is based on how they parodied it. But it's still there are scenes that just make me giggle. But it is an amazing movie, though.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
What about you, Jerry?
I was in the mood to watch something lighthearted, and I didn't want to binge watch Rick and Morty again. And because we had no Star Trek this week to watch, I decided to rewatch Lower Decks, and I watched all 8 episodes or 10 episodes, whatever it was, back to back to back to back.
Fine choice.
And it was just as good on a rewatch, and I picked up some extra things in it, and it's good writing. If you like Trek, I think you will like Lower Decks because it is not a scathing attack on it. It is an homage.
Yeah. And
they play into all of it and just have a great time with it. And I didn't realize that the guy who plays Martok played some of the aliens on it as well, the voices.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
They did a lot of that. A lot of the the actors from their show came on as voice actors for the aliens as well. So
also, if you miss Star Trek actors doing voiceovers, you can always go back and watch Gargoyles.
Gargoyles has a ton of Next Generation people.
Yeah, I get it. That
the entire Next Gen cast is the voice actors for Gargoyles.
Exactly.
They're all in there.
That is true. And that's another good show. I didn't get a chance to watch all of when it first came out. I should go back and rewatch it now that I've got Disney.
I should binge that show.
All right. And how about you, Phil?
Yeah, I'll just mention it. Not last weekend, the weekend before, I got to hang out with Sean P. Kelly on Saturday on Twitch, and we did a whole thing talking about Forbidden Lands. And then I stayed on because, all right, so this is classic me. So, we do the Twitch stream for like an hour, and then he's like, hey, if you want to hang out, I usually just, I keep the Twitch stream running. I just, I like sit and chat with the people in the chat room or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm good. Like an hour and a half later.
Yeah.
Like we wrapped the whole thing up.
We're going long.
Yeah.
He's like, wow, that went long. And I'm like, who knew?
Yeah.
Like,
gee, Sean, did you not look and see who your guest was?
Who knew?
No.
Who knew we'd go long?
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a lot of fun. Sean's great. Sean's great. It was a very, very, it was very chill. It was a Saturday morning. I recorded it at my desk. I didn't even come down here to the downstairs to record it. So I recorded it like sitting at my desk, just lounging. And it's rare that I get to do a show that I didn't produce.
Yeah.
So actually it was like a lot of fun to just sit and be the quote guest for the morning.
I actually watched it. It was a good show.
Oh, good. Yeah, gaming in PS.
Yeah, gaming in PS temporarily.
Which would be hysterical because that would also be true. Like, it'd be the show PS, PPS, PPPS, right?
Yes.
Like, just on and on and on. Yeah.
Yep.
And on and on and on.
Anyway,
Well, that's you
it was
guys.
good.
All right.
Well,
that would
let me
bring us
jump
to
in.
announcements, huh?
Yeah. Let me jump in with some stuff. We obviously did the DS9 finale last week. Tonight we are watching the DS9 documentary, What We Left Behind. There's a posting for it in the forum. The format's a little different and the timing's a little different. We're doing it at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight. Again, if you're live, you're the only people who are getting this. If you're
10:30.
10:30. Sorry, 10:30. We're doing it 10:30, not 11:30 like we normally do. We're doing 10:30 because it is a solid 2 hours. And I know people got to get up in the morning, so we're going to do 10:30 to 12:30. Watch it. We're going to watch it through Zoom. So I'm actually going to host it by playing it on my YouTube through Zoom. It's literally the only way I can think of keeping us all synced.
Yep.
Is to play it through mine. And I can do that. I can play it with pass-through audio so that you guys can all hear it, and then we'll have the chat room running on the side. I'll just mute everybody's mics. And I'll put subtitles up as
Very
well.
cool.
I think that'll work out pretty well. Yeah. That's how we're going to watch it tonight. So yeah, we'll be doing that. The thing I will say is that next week when we come back, I will have details on Voyager.
Yay.
The Voyager list is done. Evil John is checking my handiwork. We were discussing the possibility of a couple of additions to the list, but may not need to actually add them. May just put them in as extras, like if you want to watch them kind of thing. But the Voyager list is coming. March, we will be doing Voyager. We will be doing a full watch through of Voyager. In a curated list format like we've been doing. Jerry, you got a couple of Kickstarters. What do you got?
Well, we got a couple of them. First of all, our own Todd Crapper is helping us lay out for a new zine that's coming out called Back Again from the Broken Land. This is a zine about adventurers sharing stories while returning home from their great quests.
I backed this one.
I did too.
It's on my watch
looks
list.
really good.
And the next one is Everway is back. This was I think it's one of the first RPGs that Wizards of the Coast did before they got a hold of the D&D license. I've played it. It's from Jonathan Tweet. It's kind of an abstract card-based role-playing game. If you'd like to play a weird fantasy game with tarot cards, it's kind of the way this works. I loved it because character generation involved a lot of looking at cards and saying, this is what my character can do kind of thing. But this is going to have new books, more cards, a much more detailed world. I ran it. I've still got copies of it, and I think that it would do from an update. So it's on Kickstarter right now. And then the third one we have is host of Jianghu Hustle and Frequent Cyclone collaborator Eli Kurtz has a new Forge in the Dark game coming out on Kickstarter. It's actually out on Kickstarter called the External Containment Bureau. And this is another Zine Quest RPG where the players play paranormal investigators, basically finding strange things and deciding how to stop them or incorporate them as they go. So all three of these will be in the show notes. So go on and jump in and take a look at all of them. They're really going to be a lot of fun. I think I've backed all three of them now. So
cool.
I'm just going to mention the boss is telling me that if we don't mention Our Traveling Home Kickstarter is coming in 5 days on the 14th, which will be before the next time we record. That we will be reprimanded. So I don't want us to get reprimanded. So we certainly would have mentioned it on Tuesday after the Kickstarter launched, but Our Traveling Home, Ash Kreider. If you're wondering why that sounds familiar, the last game, it was the last game that was played on SaskGeek. So if you want to hear it, if you want to hear the game before the Kickstarter launches, go listen to the last episodes of SaskGeek if you haven't already, and then you will know.
There you go.
Yes. So now we're out of hot water with the boss, so we can proceed on.
All right. And that means that it's time for our feature segment, which is a deep dive. And guess what we have? We have a new deep dive bumper. Gird yourselves. I'm proud of that.
I didn't know if you were going to steal something from like Hunt for Red October, like,
I went around looking
Tupolev.
for, a royalty-free, because I didn't want to pull a sound.
Yes, royalty-free would have been a good idea, because that was not what I was thinking.
And I found like an actual, like this is from an actual submarine in like the U.S. fleet or something like that. And it's like,
nice.
Hey,
good.
So I chopped it because it was like 24 seconds long and had like 16 pings. I'm like, no, we don't need 16 of them.
Yeah, first of all, one ping only.
One ping only, yes. Vasily. All right.
All right. So, we're going to go in depth now into Forbidden Lands. So, welcome to our Undersea Observatory, where we do our in-depth looks at various games. And tonight we'll look at the game Forbidden Lands, which Bob and Phil have been playing for nearly 40 sessions.
Actually 40 now.
Actually 40, yeah. It would have been it'd been nearly 40 last week. Yeah. Actually 40 this week.
Well, 40. Actually, 40 is nearly 40, so we can throw a spot on semantics. It's a Venn diagram. So Phil has been GMing the game, and Bob is one of the players. So tonight's deep dive is going to be taking a look at from both perspectives. I'm going to be leading the discussion, and they're going to be finding information about the game. Now, we've not done one of these in a long time, so I'm going to explain the format for tonight. We're going to start with an overview of the game, just the facts with the game, the system, and such. Then we're going to talk about the play experience, how Bob and Phil feel about it, the game experience itself, talk about things they like, talk about things they don't enjoy in the game, and then talk about strategies, play styles, and then final thoughts. Now, along the way, I'm going to ask them some questions. So, to get us started, Bob and Phil, tell me a little about the game.
All right, so we're going to start out with the publisher. This is a game that is published by Free League. They're the same people who published Tales from the Loop, Mutant Year Zero, the new Aliens RPG, and a host of other games. It's billed as an open-world survival tabletop RPG, and we're going to get into that a little bit more down the road here. The setting is called a retro fantasy, and in it you play various raiders and rogues in an unforgiving world. It strives to recapture some of the open-world feelings of the 70s and 80s RPGs.
Yep, product-wise, the main game, like the thing that you would buy at your, local game store, or if you're ordering this thing on Amazon, comes in the form of a box set. The box itself is actually quite sturdy, so it's like a really nice board game box. It's got that same kind of textured outside to it. Inside, when you pop the top, it's going to have the following. It's going to have a hardcover player's manual, a hardcover GM's guide. Both of those are black and white interiors, but with stitched in it'll have it stitched in bookmarks. I think of one bookmark in each. It won't be nearly enough bookmarks.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Not supposed to be editorializing. Yeah. Anyway, hardcover player manual, hardcover GM's guide, a softcover Legends and Adventurers booklet that has some things about character backgrounds and things like that in it. It is a large, full-color, two-sided hex map. Now, it's the same map on both sides, and we'll kind of get into that when we talk about how the game's played, about why it's the same map. But you've got this like really nice big hex map that you put out on the table, and then a sheet of stickers that has various locations, like stickers that you peel off and you can stick onto the map for various locations, as well as gravestones. Where you can put gravestones for characters that haven't made it, and the whole box set retails around $50. You're going to find it cheaper in some places, based on distributor and things like that.
Cool. The setting is a fantasy land called Ravenland, where a powerful and mad wizard released a horde of demons into the world in a conflict against the forces of good. He also released a curse called the Blood Mist, which prevented people from traveling from their villages for hundreds of years. This blood mist was so deadly that if you were caught out in it overnight, it would kill you. So everybody stayed home. In the past 5 years, as the game explains when you start up, it's been 5 years since the blood mist has vanished, and people are just starting to venture out of their villages and go exploring for the first time. And now they're going out into a world that was isolated for hundreds of years, where knowledge of the past is scarce and danger lurks in every hex.
Yeah, situation-wise, your players are adventurers who are now traveling around this world, exploring things along the way. The game does not prescribe a single way to play or a single thing that the characters do. So that is going to be that will be up to you when you put the game out there. The core loop of the game is basically like travel to an adventure site, explore an adventure site, which includes some combat, and then travel again. There are options for settling down and building a stronghold. But even if you do that, then the core loop is basically like leave your stronghold to go to an adventure site, do some stuff at the adventure site, and travel home. And that's basically the core loop of the game.
Cool. The system is a version of the Year Zero engine from Free League. It's a D6 dice pool mechanic. In rare cases, you can get higher dice of D8s, D10s, and D12s that include multiple successes on them. Your dice pool is going to be based on a stat plus skill plus gear. Sixes are successes, and you only need a single 6 to be successful, but sometimes multiple successes can be beneficial to you. Ones are bad, but only if you choose to push your roll. And we'll get into that in a minute. We'll get into that right now. I'm not looking ahead far enough. If you roll your dice and you get no successes or you want more, you can choose to push your roll and re-roll all the dice that are not 1s and 6s. So if you've got 6d6 that you're rolling and all you need is 1 6 on those dice to get a success, and you get everything but a 6, 1s and 5s and 4s and 3s and whatever. As long as you don't have any 1s or 6s in there, you just re-roll them all. If you do get 1s, you have to hold on to those 1s and you can re-roll everything else. Rarely are you going to get a situation where you're going to be rolling after you've got a success. Those are instances where you're fighting something and you're like, I want to push it a little bit to see if I can get more damage on this creature because we need to take it out quick. Usually when it's something like a skill roll, you're not going to get a benefit out of having more than one success. One success is going to be enough.
Yeah, and I'll just mention really quickly, because I think if you've ever seen the game, what you'll see is that there are 3 different colored dice.
Yes.
So there are colored dice for your stats. Those are called your base dice. Those are red. White dice for your skill.
White are your base dice.
I'm sorry, white dice. Red
base.
Is
the skill.
Red is skill.
Black is gear dice.
Yeah, black is gear dice.
Yeah.
The important part is that one of them your skill dice do not have ones don't damage you.
Yes.
Whereas on your base dice and your damage dice, ones can damage you. And I think you're going to talk about that in terms of pushing, right?
Yes. So what they did with their super fancy dice that you can buy, which they're gorgeous dice, and they're very helpful. You don't need them, but they're nice. Little expensive, but I mean, custom dice are always going to be that way. But on the stat dice and the gear dice, the ones are skulls. And the 6s and anything higher on the dice that are the 8s, 10s, and 12s, those have swords on them for the successes. So you can instantly see with a glance that you've got skulls. But if you don't have a skull on the red die, that's because the red dice don't actually harm you when you get the ones. So let's say you've got a 1, you've got 6 dice you're rolling. You've already got a 1 and you got 5 other dice with crap on them. You need a success to do something. You roll those other 5 dice again and you get a 1 and a 6. Well, now you've got 2 1s and a 6. That 6 gives you the success, but those 2 1s, if they're on your stat dice, that's damage directly to the stat that you were rolling on. So if it's combat and you're rolling melee, that's your strength. You just took 2 points of strength damage. The other thing that those ones do is you take damage from them, but they also, when you take damage, you get a willpower point for each one of them. So those two ones give you 2 points of strength damage or 2 points of damage and 2 points of willpower. And willpower is used to activate certain abilities. There are talents that you can get that will have different things that you can do if you spend willpower.
Right. And if your damage is to your gear, your gear degrades and possibly breaks. So your armor can break, your sword can break. Hell, you guys have pushed a camping roll and your tent ripped.
Tent got screwed up. Yeah.
Right. Like, so your gear does take damage in this game and only if you push, right? So if you roll your dice and you get, like, for instance, and this happens when we play, like sometimes people will roll and they'll get no successes and no ones. And then everybody will be like, oh, you should just totally push that roll. Right? Like, because you've got nothing, like, there's no, like, you might as well try and see what happens. And then sometimes you will roll and you will get like 3 1s and a 6 or no 6. And everybody will be like, don't push that.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason to just there's no reason to take 3 points of damage right away before the dice are re-rolled.
But again, that's only on a push. So if your very first roll, say I've got my 6 D6s that I'm going to roll for the thing that I'm trying to do, I throw those down and I got 3 1s and a 6. That 6 gives me the success. I have not pushed. Those 3 1s don't mean anything.
Exactly.
So they don't hurt me.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Cool. So characters, talking about characters can come from different fantasy kin. So humans, dwarves, elves. They've got all the normal ones. I will say it's worth reading. They are not what you think. Dwarves and humans are pretty much what you think. Elves are very different. Halflings and goblins are very different and related to one another. And the wolfkin is kind of what you'd expect for like a wolf person. And then you also, besides your kin, you have a profession. And these are basically classes. And if you're familiar with other games from Free League, these are like the archetypes from Tales from the Loop, right? Like the rocker, the jock, like those things. And they have basically the kind of the same layout to them. Characters have skills and stats. They have a pride, which we can get into if people have questions about this later. But pride is a way to kind of get an extra success if you need it. And a dark secret. Dark secrets are like these, hidden secrets about your character that get you a little more XP if they come up in a game, like if they cause problems. You have talents. Talents are basically feats. And I think almost every talent has levels to them. So you don't just have like, I think Bob has Quartermaster, right? Tirgar has Quartermaster, right? There's Quartermaster 1, Quartermaster 2, Quartermaster 3. Each one gets progressively better.
Yeah, there's a handful of them that are just like the kin talents are all one level. Just this is your kin talent, and then the profession talents and the general talents usually have 3 levels to them.
Yep. Combat's going to use the same basic task resolution mechanism. There is actually an advanced combat set of rules for one-on-one fights that use these cards. It's kind of a little reminiscent of Burning Wheel. I will tell you, in 40 sessions, we've never used it. It's a possibility that maybe one day we'll just do it for fun, but we've just been basically using the basic, the generic combat system. It's worked fine.
Yeah.
And then there's a social combat subsystem. We just haven't used that as much either, but that's like for arguing points and things like that.
Yep.
Well, before you go on, so you told us that there are stats and skills in gear.
Yep.
And they give you dice. So what would be a standard like character, their stats, their skill? Like what would be a standard dice pool you'd have?
So
Bob, your character.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Tiergar, my dwarf. I decided that Tiergar was going to be strong, so strength of 6. I am sort of agile, so I think I've got a 4 in agility. I've got a 3 in wits, and I've got a 2 in empathy. All right. So those are my base. Those are my base dice. So I've got a big badass axe, which is 2 gear dice for combat. And I have a skill. There's a melee skill, and I've got I believe I've got a 2 in melee. So when I want to swing my axe and hit something, I've got 6 dice from my strength, 2 dice from my skill, that's 8, 2 more from my axe, which is 10, and I've got a special axe, which now, because of a talent, actually gives me a D8 artifact die for every time I roll. So no matter what I'm swinging my axe at, I've got 10 D6 and a D8 that I'm throwing down. And that can be a lot of fun.
And so do multiple successes, so multiple 6s give you extra bonuses?
Yes. So what's going to happen is if I only get 1 6, the axe I'm using is a 2 damage weapon. So if I get 1 6, there's potentially 2 points of damage going on to the opponent. Now, what happens is the opponent has the opportunity to either dodge or parry if they want to. And if they can't or don't dodge or parry, they have armor that they could potentially roll against. Dodging and parrying basically eliminates successes from my list. And then the armor is going to negate damage points that they're taking.
Okay.
So if I roll 4 successes and they dodge and get 2 successes of their own, now I'm down to 2 successes because they knocked 2 of them off. Out of those 2 successes, I've got a 2-point damage weapon. So the first success is 2 points. Then that extra success is a 3rd point. And then they roll their armor to see if they can negate any of that. So now that's how the general...
So what's the advantage of having the higher dice? Like rolling a D12, does that just give you a better chance of rolling a 6, or is there an advantage to rolling like an 8 or a 9 or something?
Yes, the 8s, the 10s, and the 12s. Anything that's a 6 or higher is successes. So on the 8... 6 is a success, 7 is a success, and 8 is 2 successes. And then there's a similar progression on the 10 and the 12. The 12 has 3 successes on the 12.
Got it. Okay.
So if you roll the max on those special, what they call artifact dice, if you get the max on those, you're getting multiple successes out of one number.
Right, and the way you get access to those, the 8, the 10, and the 12 is that some talents will open them up.
Yep.
So I think like Bob's got a talent for quartermaster when he's making his camping roll.
Yep.
He has a artifact die that he gets to roll with his, for a skill check, and then Tiergar's axe is magical.
Yep.
Which gives him a artifact die against any opponent. And then that artifact die goes up by 1 if that opponent is a demon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So good times.
So that gives us a better feel of how the dice are going to work in various situations.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
So jumping back in,
magic system.
Yeah, there's a magic system involved. It's kind of limited compared to other fantasy games. Spellcasters only get a few spells per level. They're all fueled by willpower. And there's one special roll. All spells that you cast in this game are successful, but the roll that you make determines how successful and whether or not you have any kind of magical mishap. And that's where things get fun. If you've ever played Dungeon World, when you blow a roll for magic in Dungeon World and you tear the fabric of reality, that's the kind of wacky shit that's going to happen in here. There is, because this is a game that loves tables, there is a table that you roll on. It's a D66 table. So the worst thing you can do is roll a 66, which Sean just did Sunday. And D66 is, the fabric of reality tears open, a demon steps through, grabs a spellcaster, and takes him through. The character's gone.
Ooh. Okay.
We actually, I guess I'll just aside this.
Yeah,
right?
real quick.
So this actually happened, right? Like Sean rolled to detect magic, rolled a 1. Now again, the spell's successful, like successfully detected magic, but caused a magical mishap. Then rolled and got a 66. And so when that result came up, like we're not playing super purist, so I just did what I thought any good GM would do. I said, okay, look, this is the result. I said, do you want to lose your character? Like, this is a chance for you to make a new character, jump in the story, whatever. Do you want to lose your character? And he's like, no, I rather like this character. And I was like, okay, fine. And this was right at the end of the session anyway. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm like, next session, the demon steps through and grabs you, and we're just going to have a combat to see if you can keep the demon from pulling you through to the other side of the rift.
Which
I was like,
I'm drooling over because Tyrgar's axe is great against demons. So
yeah, this should be fun, right? Like, but it just was a thing. Like if we were playing super purist, like if we were playing DCC, I would have just been like, aha, your character's gone. But we're 40 sessions into this game, and like just like removing a character based on a bad die roll at this point seems harsh, but I wanted to leave it in the player's hands.
Yeah.
So we'll make a big fight scene out of it. It'll be fun. It'll be a very unexpected fight scene that's about to happen.
Nice surprise.
Sounds good, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So in addition to the fact that there is a magic system, there is a whole subsystem for overland travel. There's a system for creating a stronghold, improving it, and defending it. And there's also a crafting system where you can build any of the equipment you want as long as you have materials and skills and tools. And in fact, I had to actually build tools in order to then build functions in the stronghold. So there's a little bit of a
little Minecraft going on.
Little Minecraft going on in there.
For the GM, in the GM book, there is a chapter of monsters and NPCs. Monsters are pretty neat. So there are NPCs. So like when you fight like skeletons or bandits or whatever, like those just have like stats like a character, and you roll them, like you roll their attacks and defenses and stuff like a character. The monsters all have their own, each monster has its own table of attacks that you basically roll like a D6 on. And like the attacks are like really thematic for the monster. And some of them like can attack the whole party at once. Some of them like do very special things. And they wind up, it'll tell you like, this is the attack roll, this many base dice, and it's, like a damage 2 attack, whatever. And so it adds this like randomness when you GM, like you don't really know on your turn, like what the attack the monster is going to take is. You just roll a D6 and see what happens. And then they have some capacity for making your own monsters, like specifically demons. There's some charts you can roll to kind of roll up, demonic creatures. There's a pretty extensive history in the front of the book. It was kind of intimidating to me. Again, I shouldn't talk about this in editorial. There is an extensive history of the land in the front of the book, including a whole timeline of events that occur. There's also a chapter dedicated to random encounter tables. It's actually one table and then a whole bunch of random encounters that you use during travel. So as you're traveling, the table is separated by geography. So like, are you in the plains, the woods, the deep woods, on a river, in a lake? I think there's there's a handful more categories, but you roll on that to get a random encounter. The encounters are pretty elaborate. They can be as simple as like some monster, or they can be more elaborate, like you stumble on a wedding.
Yeah.
Like, and it's got a little paragraph, like it's got some box text for you to read at the top, and then it's got like a couple paragraphs telling you what's going on. So some of the encounters are reusable. Some of the encounters, like, you got to just cross off, like, had this encounter, it's not coming back. There is a set of random tables for generating villages, castles, and dungeons. So when you want to make any one of those, there's like a whole series of tables that you roll to give you kind of story prompts about each of them. And the tail end of the book contains 3 adventure sites for the players to explore. One of them is a village called the Hollows. One of them is a castle called Weatherstone. And one of them is a dungeon called the Vale of the Dead. And all 3 of them are... they all have maps. They have encounters, stats. What they don't have is like a single way into each of them. When you read the adventure sites, they give you some ideas of how the players can get there, and they give you some ways that the players can use, like the way you can use the adventure, but they don't give you like one prescribed way, which is kind of interesting. Like, as a GM, even though it's prepared material, you still got to do some preparation to kind of decide like how, like, you know, how you're going to use this adventure site, which I think is cool because it gives you that ability to kind of customize the adventure site to your needs.
They've also got some additional products out there. In addition to the main game, there's a quick start PDF. There's the campaign setting for the Bitter Reaches. There's the campaign setting for the Raven's Purge. There's the Crypt of the Mellified Maid adventure. There's a Spire of Quetzal adventure. And there's also a GM screen and a set of card decks with initiative cards, magic items, and horses. So those are all available. I know that last month Bundle of Holding did a Forbidden Lands bundle. I don't know if it's still available. I tried to find it and I couldn't figure it out yet.
Yeah, I think it went away yesterday, unfortunately.
So take a peek and see. But now we have an understanding of the game. I'm going to ask you two, starting with Bob, about your overall feelings for the game. So, Bob, tell us about your play experience.
So, it's definitely evocative of the old school style. The whole, traveling the wilderness and keeping track of your equipment and stuff. It's got you keeping track of like food and water. There's a limited amount of space that you have on your person for carrying capacity. Different things like that. It definitely, as soon as we started playing it, I was like, yeah, this feels like way back in the day when I was playing D&D for the first time. It's very cool. Evocative of the old school.
Right. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure what Bob said is true. It is definitely not an OSR game.
No.
But I think what the way they market it as a retro fantasy, like it feels like that, but it's still very much a traditional game, right? It has the dice pool is a success failure. There's no partial success. There's a little bit of critical success, like when you in combat, like you can do some more things, like in terms of like critical damage, and like there's like mishap tables, so there's like some fumbling kind of things with magic. But basically, like if you're rolling for a skill, one success out of the pool will do it. There are some occasions where you can say, like as a GM, you can say like, look, this is like some pretty like this is really difficult. I'm going to need 2 successes for you to be successful at this. So there's a little bit of that, but it's still pretty much what I would consider a traditional game system, in that narrative power sits pretty firmly with the GM, players have autonomy of primarily just their character, and you don't really have a you have a pretty much a pass-fail mechanical system. But I will say that I think that the game benefits from a lot of modern game design. So while it is a binary pass-fail system, it is a dice pool. So the odds, a dice pool with push, right? So push is with consequences, which I guess is maybe its version of success with complications. Like there's only one complication, which is damage to you. Oh, that's interesting.
But even that is kind of mitigated a little bit by giving you the bonus of the willpower.
Oh, yeah. No, and that's what I'm saying, right? Like that's the benefit of the modern design is like pushing rolls is not always it's not always to your advantage, but it's always rewarded, right? So if you damage yourself by pushing, you get willpower, and you want willpower points for other stuff in the game. So if you're a mage or a druid or whatever, you absolutely want willpower points. And if you are any other profession, the higher end a lot of the higher end talents require willpower points to fuel them.
Okay.
So there are ones like I think you have it, Bob, and I know Glenn has it for Path of the Bow, which is with a willpower point, he can negate an armor roll.
Yep.
So he can hit his opponent, spend a willpower point, and I don't roll for armor, which can be hugely advantageous. But in a combat requires him to consume some willpower points. So it's got those nice touches to it. Like it plays like an older hex crawly kind of fantasy game, but it also has fantasy, like it also has modern touches in the design where it doesn't feel like you're playing a game that was written in the late 70s.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. So with that in mind, what are the things you've enjoyed most about the game? You can make it mechanics, setting, etc. So start with Phil.
I love travel in this game. So this is a game that fully mechanized travel. Travel has its own subsystem. It's not terribly hard to pick up. Like when you pick up the game, it takes a little bit to get used to the travel system. I will strongly recommend. Oh, I think I actually in the game, I will save that piece for my tips and suggestions. The travel system is a different time scale. So you do everything in quarter days. And there are activities. So there's like a list of activities that you have to undertake as you travel. And each hex that you go through requires, like each new hex you go into requires a what's called a pathfinding roll. But there's also hunting. There's foraging for water. Camping has a role. Like it seems silly, but like making camp is actually important because if you don't make camp, you can't get a good night's sleep. And if you don't sleep, you can't heal.
Yeah.
And the players had a case where they were going home from visiting the dwarves, their allies in the north, this enclave of dwarves. And you had 2 bad nights of camping rolls. And you guys were in bad shape.
Yes. There's a condition called sleepy that you end up with. And basically, you're like desperately wanting coffee and sleep, not necessarily in that order.
It was so bad that when you finally made camp, you guys were like only a hex away from home.
Yeah. But
like made camp and slept for like into the day, and we're like, we just need to sleep and recover before we try to get the last hex home.
Because you never know what you're going to run into.
So it's pretty sweet. Like I like it. Like, and I also like, so one of the things you have to do is like, you have to know when you've been in a hex, because if you've traveled a hex before, you don't have to roll the pathfinding roll for it.
Yep.
So our map that we have in the game has all these marks on it from the routes that we've taken before. So, and then here's the cool balance. And this is the modern game design part. So if you go through hexes you've been through before, you don't have to make the pathfinding roll, which actually lets you move kind of quicker to get places. But in the experience section, one of the questions in order to get an experience point for the game is, did you go into a hex you have not been in before?
Yep.
Right.
So there is a mechanical reward for exploring in the game, and there are benefits for not exploring in the game. So like if you like, and sometimes, and I've, the players have done this in a totally gamer fashion, is like on the way home, they'll take most of the route and then be like, wait, take this hex.
Yeah.
So that we can get the experience point and
jog
then
over
get
to the
back
left
on
one hex and then come back.
right. Which is totally legit, because Lord knows what's going to happen when you have to roll for all the things like getting into a hex and encounters and stuff. Like they put themselves out there to do that stuff. So I really like the travel system in this game, and it was one of the things that really sucked me into this game was the idea of a game that was like, look, travel is a thing. It's not just a mathematical calculation with a few wandering encounters where it's like, well, you're 150 miles from the dungeon, you travel at 15 miles, an hour, whatever. Here's how long it takes you to get to the dungeon. Roll one random encounter. Like, it's got more meat to it.
Yeah.
And it is actually pretty fun to play.
And it's
looking forward to
meat.
what they might do with Lord of the Middle Earth now. So
yeah, and in fact, actually, that same mechanic is going into Twilight 2000, which I also think will be pretty wild.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, Bob, what did you like?
Yeah, I'm just going to real quick say yes to what Phil had just said. Travel is amazing, and one of the other things that I like about travel is the fact that when you get into these situations where it's like, oh, we have an encounter coming up, you get the opportunity, whoever's your scout while you're traveling gets to eyeball stuff. And if they make their scout roll, they see it coming before you encounter the actual encounter. So sometimes you can be like, oh, we don't want any part of that. For whatever reason, whether it's like, oh, no, that looks dangerous, we don't want any part of it. Or if it's like, I don't want to talk to anybody today. Let's just skip it and move on. like you can see what's coming. We had this one stretch where like 3 times we ran into this roving caravan of jesters and clowns. And we were all like, nope, not going to talk to those people. Nope. So we just avoided them because we made the roll. So that's good.
And there have been other times where you haven't made the roll and like an encounter has landed on top of you.
Yes. And some of those were gloriously fun.
Yes.
That's cool.
The thing that I really enjoy, and I've been trying to reconcile this because there's kind of some contradictory feelings here, but this system makes me feel like a badass. I described how Tiergar gets his dice pool for combat, right? I was off by 1 die. I actually roll 11d6, and now I'm rolling 2d8, possibly 1d8 and a d10, depending on if it's a demon. Okay? 11d6 and 2d8 to try and hit somebody. And it's like, wow, there's this huge friggin' glob of dice that I have to roll. And yes, it's a little frustrating sometimes when the 6s aren't coming, or if the 1s are coming up like abundantly. But generally, it's like, I'm getting where I need to be, and some nights I'm just a killing machine. It's like, oh, that needs to go down. Boom, there's like 4 successes. All right, boom, and away you go. I've got a talent that if it's not a monster, if it's a regular type person, like one of the kin, as long as I do 1 point of damage, they have to make a critical roll, a critical damage roll. Or I make the critical damage roll, and I could literally kill it on the spot with the crit table. So,
yeah, that crit table is reminiscent of like a roll master or like a DCC crit table.
So I am a pain dispensing machine. And the thing that's weird about it is like let's go back and say like Shadowrun. All right. You've got this high latency. It's like, well, I need all of these dice for this and all of these. And then you got this giant die pool of dice, and you roll them and you got to adjudicate what's going on and and all that crap like that. And it's like, That sucked. I hated that. But the way this is implemented, first of all, with the special dice, you've got the skulls and the swords, which instantly stand out. You don't have to worry about, is that a 5 or a 6, or is that a 3 or whatever? Like, none of those other numbers in between mean anything. All right. So you're looking for successes and ones. That's it. When I'm building the pool, there isn't a huge amount of latency. It's even less now with the online roller for Roll20, because the character sheets that somebody put together, you just click a button and say, I want to do a combat roll with this weapon. Boom. And it fills it all out for you. And then you hit the roll button. Sometimes you have to make an adjustment like, oh, I get a bonus skill die on this one. So I add another skill die, then hit roll. But there isn't a huge, to me, there wasn't a huge, even when I was gathering the dice myself, there wasn't a huge amount of latency in building the pool or adjudicating the roll once I made it. So it's empowering for this character and for me to go into these situations and just be like, boom, dropping a ton of dice and going, yeah, eat it.
Well, and that's okay. I mean, I like to see that in games.
Yeah.
I like to see games where players get a chance to actually be the badasses. There have been games that we've seen over the years where they tend to try to keep the players from getting too powerful after a while. It sounds like you're a decent challenge, but there's still a lot of room for you to fail if something happens.
Oh, absolutely.
That's always a good combo.
Absolutely.
That's always a good combo.
And there's similarly, I've got a fair amount of dice that I'm rolling when I'm defending. And I've got one of the talent paths that I took is I forget the name of it, but the Path of the Shield, where I can actually, with my shield, I can parry for myself, and I can also parry for my comrades if they're nearby within a certain distance. And I've got, essentially, as long as I've got willpower, I can make as many parries as I want in a round. And only one of them counts against my actions for the turn. I just like, oh, I need to parry again. Spend a willpower, parry. And away I go. So there's a lot of fun, flavorful stuff. Sean gets to do a lot of interesting stuff with the magic. So it's very cool, flavorful stuff. And we all get to do something interesting. So very cool.
Right. So let's take a break and head in the chat room for life for a bit, see what they're up to. But before we do, Bob, tell us about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network.
Sure. Let's talk about Bonus Experience. Ray and Monica are two old friends exploring gameplay and design through the lens of diversity, while also sharing some of the dumbest humor gaming has to offer. I think you should check it out. I think it's a great show, and I think you're going to enjoy it. Bonus Experience. All right. So in the chat room, Chromatic Chameleon made a comment saying that they wish the game was more open. The heavy use of the Forbidden Lands setting that's baked in is a lot to handle. Uh-huh. And yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, from a certain perspective, there are certain things that you can kind of Mad Lib your way through it. At a certain level, you can just say, here, take this proper name and just make it a blank and then insert your own stuff. But the setting goes so deep with the blood mist and all this stuff. There's baked in assumptions that make it more difficult. It would be interesting to see someone basically take it apart and say, okay, let's shave this off. Let's tweak this a little bit. Let's Mad Lib this part and make it a little more generic so that you could more easily go, here's my homebrew thing, dump my homebrew onto Forbidden Lands and go. That would be an interesting exercise.
Yeah, there's definitely a project you could do to get there. Like the mechanics part. The mechanics are all fine. So the player's book, it would be relatively easy to scrub down to your own homebrew fantasy. The GM's book would be a significantly harder task.
Sure.
And again, it's got this deep amount of history, and I'll say it now, like it was a little intimidating for me at first to kind of deal with all of the history. Like it comes up in the game now and then, and you kind of like, I need to know it more than the players. So it's been a bit of a challenge kind of reading through and getting it. I will also say this, and I do like this. There are these legends that the players get. They're handouts that are in the book, or you can get PDF versions of them on the website. The legends are not reliable narrators.
Yeah.
So the legends don't always match up to the history, which is fine, right? Like, because I think that's actually one of the really cool things about the legends is like sometimes the legends like understand the events but not the why. And like that winds up coming up in game. Like sometimes just like through the course of the game, you'll be like, huh, the legend said this. That is not what happened here. And you kind of have to piece through those things yourself. But there's a decent amount of lore that a GM winds up having to internalize through the game and then expressing it back out if you're using all of the established material.
Yep.
And it's not terrible, but if, you know, like me who came off of playing a whole bunch of PBTA games, like jumping into a game with a fully established setting, and I was like, oh boy, like this is like, you know, this is a lot of history. There's a couple of major religions, and two of the major religions, and again, this is kind of realistic, but again, it's a little bit to digest. Like the two major religions are basically two different interpretations of the same legend.
Yeah.
Like the same legend, like they both agree the legend occurred, but there are two characters in the legend, and one religion is like, oh, this was the most important character in that story. And the other religion's like, except you're wrong, this was the most important character, so we built our whole religion based on that.
Yep.
And that's not terrible, right? It's just like a thing, like it's messy.
Yeah.
The history's a little messy, the gods are messy. And I don't know if that's just the aesthetic of that game. I don't know if that's more of a European aesthetic when it comes to approaches to history and legends and stuff. It doesn't bother me, but it was a thing that I had to kind of reconcile as I was starting to learn the game on the GM side of the screen.
And if I recall correctly, you started reading that well before we were ready to spin up the game.
Yeah, it doesn't come into effect. Like if you stick to the book, like I used the Hollows, right? That's the first town in the game. We started the game in the Hollows and did some stuff, and the legend isn't as big of a deal. Like the history and religion, like it's more flavor there. Mm-hmm. But when you get into the Raven's Purge campaign book, then all of that stuff is super important.
Yeah.
And messy and imprecise. And you wind up having to kind of sit down and kind of resolve like which parts of this religion, legend, history do we want to go through, and which parts do I just kind of want to push off to the side because we don't really need to use them. So there is definitely some, on the GM side, there is definitely some campaign management that needs to be done in that respect.
Yeah.
All right, so with that in mind, let's continue our deep dive into the Forbidden Lands. So before the break, we talked about things that you really liked about the game. Let's talk about some of the things that you either didn't like or think that they need improvement on.
Yeah, so there are some things in the game that are a bit vague or kind of thin. You have, I'm trying to think of a really good example, but for strongholds, for example, all right, you have all of these rules for different things different functions in your stronghold, and there are benefits and requirements, and it's like, okay, if you want to have a sheepfold, then you need to have this much wood, this much stone, you need these tools to build it, and you need someone who has the builder talent. Okay, that's great. And then it's like, okay, and if you have a sheepfold and you find some sheep somewhere, then once a year you can shear the sheep, and or twice a year you can shear the sheep, I think, and once a year they will bear young. And that's kind of where they leave it. There's some other stuff with like armor, for example. For the life of me, the other day, Sunday, when we were camping and we had an encounter, I was trying to decide if I was going to put my armor on, and I'm looking through the book, and I could not find anything anywhere that told me how long it takes to put your armor on. And I went, well, you know what? My comrades are in trouble. I can grab my axe and my shield. Those are the two most important things. If I get hit, I get hit, but I'm probably not going to get hit because I'm a parry machine. So I'm like, I'm good. So I grabbed my shield and my axe and I went out. So there's probably a good handful or more things that are kind of on the thin side that aren't super detailed, or maybe they didn't realize they needed a little bit more meat on the bone or something. And sometimes those things kind of stand out in a session. It's like, oh, you know, and we kind of got to hand wave something or just say, you know what, we're going to do it this way. There are a couple things about the book with the organization of the book. Like we missed a really important rule. And that is that if you take damage to your stats, it's supposed to reduce the number of dice you're rolling until you get healed. So if I have 6 points in strength, which is the max you can have, and I take 3 points of strength damage, the next time I roll something that has to do with strength, I'm supposed to be only rolling 3 dice. And we literally, 4 people, all missed that in the book.
Yep.
And so we were just going, okay, fine, you know, it's like, you know, that's great. It's more important if you take your last point, then you get broken, and then you have to deal with being broken because you're out of points. But we were still rolling with the full boat.
Yeah, and we just decided by the time we discovered that we made the mistake, we were like a bunch of sessions in, and we were like, you know what? We're not even fixing it.
Yeah, let's just leave it. It kind of added a little bit of a heroic bent to the characters. And considering all the other stuff that can go wrong and all the damage that you can do to yourself and the mishaps and stuff, it's like, you know what? That's not going to be totally unbalancing. And like I said, 40 sessions in, you know, it hasn't really hurt anything, and it's been a lot of fun. So, but yeah, there are a few things like that where, you know, there's some thin stuff that, you know, could it be a little more detailed? Or were we not supposed to take it as seriously as we did? Something like that. But those are the things that I saw.
Yeah, there's definitely some places where as a GM, you got to make some rulings. Like, there's no rules for how long it takes to put on your armor. Yeah. Like, you know, you were like, I basically was like, you at least got to spend a turn.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then again, the counter argument to that is that leads towards the old school feel.
Yeah.
Of our little retro.
Yeah. So that's also, you know, that's not bad at all. I'll tack on to what Bob said. One of the things I dislike about the game is that characters are not very tough, and they don't get tougher. So your hit points are just your strength damage. And like Bob said, Bob's like the toughest character in the group. How many strength points you got, Bob?
I got 6.
Right.
That's it. That's all I got. I'm never getting any more.
Right. Sean, I think Sean and Glenn have the 2 weakest characters who have 3s.
Yep. And
you can't buy more attribute points. Like when you spend your XP, you can increase your skills. You can buy or increase your talents, but you can't ever affect your stats. So you don't ever get more hit points. And on top of that, Bob, what's your wits?
My wits is 3, my empathy is 2.
Right. So if you take fear damage, you'll break on, in fact, you did break once on empathy damage.
Yep.
So it's one of the things, and this is, it's one of the things about the game that I think is tricky is that, or I don't particularly like, is that there's no real way to buy up more hit points. And I don't know if you need a ton of them, but it would be kind of cool to either be able to raise your stats or, as a hack to the game, use experience points to buy extra points in those pools. Like, be able to say, like, your strength hit points are your strength plus whatever hit points you bought. Like, just to make you more resilient. Because when you look at some of the monsters, I'll just give you, for instance, like a dragon has 24 strength.
Yeah.
And some of these things roll like, you guys fought a griffin the other night, and I think it rolled on average like eight or nine dice for an attack. And it just needs like a few, like, it needs a few hits. Now, again, everybody has multiple ways to mitigate damage, right? So parry and dodge, you can parry and dodge one attack per turn. So, or if you're Bob, you can parry more because that's part of his gig. So you can do that. That's going to help mitigate some damage. If you have armor, that helps mitigate some damage. But if you're not the frontline fighter, your armor only has a couple dice for soaking damage. And here's the rule. If you roll to soak damage and any of it gets through, then your armor also takes damage.
Yep.
So, like, you, over the course of, like, like, in fights, you start to lose, like, your armor starts to degrade. Now, if your armor's like leather, repairing leather is actually just some downtime in camp with a needle and thread, and you can put that back together. But if it's chain or plate, you got to get to a forge.
Yeah.
Which, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you could be kind of screwed.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you are, like, the characters are kind of frail. There's a reason why there's a sheet of gravestones. And if you want to play it that way, I think that's totally fine, right? Our style has been to play it a little more heroic. So I tend not to overwhelm encounters. Like, we've played some pretty large encounters before, and everyone's done all right. We've had a couple of really close calls where, like, it was pretty touch and go on who was going to make it or not.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and magical healing, there is some, but it's, it's not, I mean, it's somewhat limited because it's based on spending of willpower points.
Yeah. Now, that being said, there's a little game that you can play. There's like almost a little mini game that you can play. If you get the right magic, the paths that Sean's character has, there's a thing in there where you can draw willpower from another person. And you can either do it willingly, or you can, I think it has, wait.
You can do it unwillingly.
You can do it, yeah, it can be unwilling. But you can have, like, your party members, we could volunteer some of our willpower. So if I'm sitting there with a max of 10, Sean can cast a spell and pull willpower from me. And then there's another thing that you can do where you can imbue magic into an object. So technically there's a workaround where we could say, here's our magic healing stick. All right. And Sean can put magic into it and, here's the willpower stick. Sean can put willpower into it to store it, for example, and then suck willpower from the party members to replenish his own, and then basically have another source of willpower for them to use to cast spells when necessary. So there's some funky stuff that if you really read how all of that stuff works, where you can game it a little bit. But yeah, there's a fragility to the characters out of the box that you have to be aware of, which again leans into the old school feel. Generally, you were fragile people.
Yep, that's the thing.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about something else. Let's look at what kind of tips or strategies you have for somebody who's interested in playing, or somebody who's interested in GMing this game.
Yes.
So,
So yeah, I'm going to say the first thing is like, do not hand wave travel.
Yeah.
If you're looking to hand wave travel, just don't play this game. Play other fantasy games. Travel is a essential component of this game. It is part of what this game is about. So you got to keep the travel in, learn the travel subsystem. The characters need to invest in the talents that make traveling easier. So as badass of a fighter as Tirgar is, Tirgar also has like level 2 or 3 quartermaster.
Yeah.
To help with that. And Gore, our hunter, has cooking, and our thief has sewing, and because those skills wind up being important when you're on the road. Yep. So you gotta just like stick with having that system in there and be comfortable with it. It's cool for the crafting of items. Like you can make more, like you can make a spear while you're on the road. You can repair a tent, those kinds of things. If you are playing for any extended period of time, it is worth keeping a calendar. If we want to get, and I made this joke on Gaming and BS, right? If you want to get true Gygaxian, like having an accurate record of time keeping in the game is a critical component. But time also plays into the travel system. So in different times of the year, there is different amounts of daylight in the 4 quarters of the year. So like in the winter, there's only 2 quarters of daylight. You may or may not want to travel far distances in the winter because there are penalties for trying to travel in the dark.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So like, for instance, our characters in our campaign sat out the whole winter and stayed home and worked on their stronghold for the whole winter because they were like, I don't want to have to go traveling because we'll have 1 quarter of daylight to travel, 1 quarter of daylight to make camp, and then 2 quarters of night.
Yep.
So those are things. So don't do that. Once you get a stronghold, you have got to keep a calendar. Because then you get into things like, and this is where the game, like this part of the game gets a little mathy, but the quarry produces X amount of stone per week. The mine produces so much iron. And then you need to know those things because you need to know how many weeks until we can build a wall around our stronghold. So we...
There actually isn't any rules for building walls.
Correct. Other than you need this much stone, this much time, and there's a mechanical benefit in the game for having walls around your
Well, no, literally, walls are not part of this. There's
it's not walls. What is it? Buttresses?
Like a portcullis, ramparts.
Ramparts is the one.
But like if you wanted to like actually build a wall around like your town, there's literally no mechanic for that.
Right. Yeah.
So you got to kind of make that up.
Yeah, there's some things you're going to have to do with that. But once you have a stronghold, like you actually do need to actually keep track of you need to keep track of the weeks that pass in the game. So we actually have a Google spreadsheet that has the weeks of the game. And, when we're traveling, we're just marking like on the calendar, like travel day, adventure site or whatever. But then like when they get home in the stronghold, like maybe a month or 2 will pass by because they'll be like, all right, well, let's work all through winter. And we'll return to we'll hit the road in the spring. Okay, well, great. That's 8 weeks. Let's talk about what resources you've generated. How much do you have to pay your staff? Because you got to pay the people that are living, and even those we kind of bent the rules on because I thought the costs were super high.
Yeah, there was some big numbers on those costs for paying. We bent the rules a little on that because everybody gets to basically live in the keep. Kind of thing. But even all of that all matters too when we're off adventuring. So if we go someplace and it takes like 3 days to get there, we're there for a day and then 3 days to get back, we killed a week. We still got to know what everybody back home at the keep was doing for that week, what they were generating. We have to pay them for their salaries. So Yeah.
It sounds a little bit like a nice update to the old D&D companion rules where they talked about strongholds.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's got that feel to it. And it's kind of nice. Like, there are some nice benefits. Like, if you build a religious shrine in your stronghold, then you automatically get a point of willpower when you return home.
Yep.
So some of the things have like some like in-play benefits. Some things have benefits for the stronghold because there is even a small mass combat rule section.
Yep.
So like things can lay siege to your stronghold. And it's got kind of a neat mass combat system. It's not heavily detailed, but it's enough that a GM could grab on and use to make an interesting adventure. We did one.
Yeah.
Where an enemy force attempted to break into the keep, and they repelled them in a pretty interesting. I want to say that it felt very cinematic.
That's cool.
How about you, Bob? What's some of your strategies?
Yeah, so to piggyback on that, make a spreadsheet to track goods and different stuff like that, especially if you've got a stronghold. We have a stronghold sheet that keeps track of what goods we have in what forms, whether it's raw iron ore or processed iron, pelts that you get from killing animals that can get processed into leather, all of that stuff. We track, and there's a sheet that comes with the game that's like a character sheet where you track all this stuff. I built it into a spreadsheet with all kinds of form fillable stuff and drop downs and lookups and everything. So we can sit there and go, okay, now we've got a new quarry worker. We can add a new hireling quarry worker and put in what their salary is, and it adds up all their salaries and all that stuff like that. So it's worth keeping track of all that stuff if you're going to do a stronghold. The other thing that I will say is, and again, this all depends on how you feel about the old school feel. Don't feel compelled to fight everything. Sometimes you got to just look at it and go, nope, turn around and walk away. Sometimes it's turn around and run away before it sees you. If you sit there and go, every encounter is going to be a combat to the death, you're going to lose. You're going to lose a body. Somebody's going to go. Somebody's going to die.
Having a good scout while traveling is worth its weight in gold.
Yes, and as Phil said already, there are different skills that some people may dismiss out of hand, like tailor and quartermaster. Well, that's a talent, but like they're all talents. But like having someone be the tailor who can actually mend cloth and different stuff like that. I have the tanner talent, which lets me make leather out of pelts, so I can help repair leather armor. And different stuff like that. So there are things that you're going to run into where you're like, oh, do we have a cook? Oh, nobody can make food? Oh, well, then we're going to eat raw meat. It's like not everything is just hand wavable, throw it away. We don't care about that. It makes for deeper characters. Stop and think about that. It's like, yes, we've got this thief who bills himself as kind of an assassin-y kind of guy, and he's fucking Garrick, okay?
Yeah.
Brother Jim's character is Garrick, a simple tailor who will knife you in the back and leave you bleeding on the floor. So, embrace those things and make sure that you spread out, especially the travel ones. You need a scout, you need a pathfinder, you need a quartermaster, and you probably need somebody to hunt for food while you're camping. Like, if you got all of those things, then you're going to have some good times.
I'll mention really quick, in case people are wondering, food, water, and arrows in the game use resource dice.
And torches. Use resource dice, which I think are brilliant,
yes. Right? So at the end of every day, you roll your food die and your water die, and what is it? If it comes up to the is it the max number or is it a min? 1? I can never remember which side it is.
Yeah, if it's 1, is it 1 or 1 or 2?
I think something like that. Like it's on the low side.
Yeah. So you start out with a D12 as the default, and you roll that, you get a 1 or a 2. Oh, now it's a D10. And that's how it goes through the attrition. So if you keep rolling well, you never have to get new arrows. you shoot a bazillion arrows during the combat, whatever. At the end of the combat, you roll your D12. It's like, oh, look, I got a 12, I got a 5, I got a 7, whatever. You don't have to worry about it until you get down to D6, and then, oh no, I rolled a 1 on a D6. Now I'm out.
Yeah, and like when you're heading out to travel, like now it's easy. You guys have the stronghold, so it's like, fine, we leave the house with D12 water, we leave with D12 food. Yeah. But when you guys were first beginning, sometimes you were on the road with like D8 food.
Yep.
And 1 or 2 nights of rolling poorly.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, we're starting to run out of food again.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's got to go hunt and get us a few units of food, and each unit bumps you back up a die.
Yep.
Okay. That's cool.
And you can only store food, like if you have a cook who can convert raw food into something edible.
Yeah, your raw food only lasts a certain amount of time. When you've got your stronghold, if you make a root cellar, the root cellar takes certain things and makes them last 10 times longer because you can store them in a cold, dry place. Stuff like that.
And so, and this all sounds very fiddly because it is, right? And I don't know why it works, but it's like, it's fiddly, but just fiddly enough. Like any more fiddly, and I think it would be annoying, but it's like, just seems to be enough to not be a pain in the ass. And to actually still be fun.
To hit that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It sounds good. All right. I guess with that, let's go to our final thoughts.
Yeah, so as we were just saying, it hits that sweet spot. The game is kind of a conundrum for me. I played Tales from the Loop before this game, which is the same core mechanic. You build a pool of D6s. You need to roll 6s to get successes. And if you get 1s, bad things happen. And I hated it. I loved the characters we were playing. I loved the story we told. Every time I needed to pick up the dice, I was like, ugh. I dreaded it. I hated that system. And then we got to this system, and I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm like, I like the concept of the game, but man, that dice mechanic. And we sat down, we started playing, and I'm like, I love this. And it's just, I don't know what it is. It feels more forgiving to me for some reason. The artifact dice, getting that extra D8 sometimes or D10, isn't something that was in Tales from the Loop. That's straight up D6s. It seemed like every time I needed to do something, I wasn't getting enough 6s, and there weren't any ways for me to get more. That's what it is. It's the push mechanic. Because there really isn't, like, the only way that you could do rerolls or get more successes was expending certain things in Tales from the Loop.
Right. And the idea in Tales from the Loop is you push to take conditions.
Yeah.
And then the only way to get rid of conditions is to go have a dramatic scene with your anchor. Right. So it basically wants you to get all fucked up in the drama of the game and then go have a dramatic moment to clear those all out.
But with this, it's like, oh, I'm rolling 11d6 for a combat roll. I got 0 successes. I just push it and roll all 11d6 again.
Yeah.
The odds of me getting 6 1s is not insignificant, but it's not significant enough that I'm super worried about it. I'd be more worried if I already had a bunch of 1s. Then I'd be like, maybe I don't push it, but... Well,
and those are some of the in-game decisions, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You've taken some damage. Do you want to push this roll?
Yeah.
Like, maybe you do, maybe you don't.
But there's
I have no damage.
Yeah.
This roll is clean looking.
Yep.
Yes, it's a lot of dice and some 1s could come up, but with a good number of successes, I might be able to just finish this thing off right now.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I may take 4 points of damage, but I'm going to kill the beast and then we can all go to sleep for the night. I'll get those 4 points back.
Yeah, there's some cool mechanical decisions on the player side. Yeah. There's a little less on the GM side, but on the player side, I think there's some cool kind of gamey decisions you have to make about this system.
Yeah. But there's just enough different about the core mechanic that what is going on? Go away. All of a sudden, I got to pop up. Oh, man. Go away. So there's just enough different about that core mechanic that I enjoy it more in this game than I did in Tales from the Loop. So that's cool. As we said before, it evokes that old school feel, which there's a nice nostalgia to that. And there's enough new and interesting stuff. The fiddling of the stuff that we've got on spreadsheets. There's just enough mathy stuff. And I found it very interesting, like planning ahead, like, okay, I'm the builder. Like nobody else can actually build a function in the stronghold. I'm the one that does the building. So we have to have time for me to do the building. So if I'm out chopping wood with the other people that need to help chop wood because we need 600 units of wood in order to do something, then I'm not doing anything else because I'm out chopping wood. So there's just enough of that I found it interesting to plan out what we want to build next, what resources we need to have, how we're going to get those resources, and then going out and doing the plan and going from there. So it's a lot of fun, and it hit certain sweet spots that I hadn't realized that I enjoyed in the current climate of what we've been playing. We've been playing so many indie games and so many, Powered by the Apocalypse games and stuff. This was just enough of a tweak to the side with some different stuff that it hit a spot that I didn't realize I was missing. And so, enjoying hell, 40 sessions in. And we could go 40 more for all we know. Anything's possible.
Okay. Phil?
Yeah, weirdly, this is like one of my favorite fantasy games. Like, we started playing this on a lark, like we were between games, and I was like, are you guys interested? Like, I'll run this game. And people were like, yeah, let's play it. And like, it's turned out to be like one of my favorite fantasy games that I've played ever.
Yep.
And I'm not even 100% sure how that happened. I think it is the mixture of combat, exploration, and stronghold building that I've really kind of fallen in love with in this game. I've also really liked that the scope of this game is this is not a high fantasy game. Like, this is not like, you don't just like hop a griffin and travel across the world or teleport to the other side of the world and go on an adventure. Like, going on an adventure across the world is a commitment in the game. Like, it's a decision to be like, well, I guess we're leaving the stronghold for like a month, and, hopefully we'll get there without getting too banged up, or on our way there, we better stop we better make our way through this town because we may need like to get to to a forge in case we have to resmith out some gear. Or, we're going to have to make sure we go hunting today because we're running low on food. Like, it's a different scale of game. Like, it's a lower scale of game. And I kind of like it. Like, I like the logistics of that. I like the idea that if a place is like across the continent, there's like some serious consideration. I liked when the players like looked. There was a place they needed to go, the Vale of the Dead, and they looked at where it was, and they were like, yeah, but winter. Like, this isn't the best time for us to be traveling. We should hold until spring. And then we'll leave once spring arrives because we'll have better daylight, and we can get there faster than if we try to go in the winter and have to contend with the shorter days of traveling and the cold. As like a legitimate thing that happened. Like, that was a decision, the decision the players made in the game to postpone an adventure for 2 months of campaign time. And some other shit happened while they were like sitting in their, stronghold that, for those 2 months that they also had to deal with. So yeah, I don't like it. For me, it hits the spot in that it's it's low enough. It's high enough fantasy that there's still some pretty heroic things that happen, and it's low enough fantasy that like you're not like a party of Elminsters, running through and just like kicking ass through fantasy dungeons or whatever. Like
Yeah.
you still have to consider like, do we really want to fight this thing? Maybe we do. Especially if we think we can get to sleep tonight. Because if we can get to sleep, we could heal and we'll be ready for tomorrow. So yeah, it's just it's found this really neat spot. I think it would be fun to hack into a homebrew. I think that all the mechanics are there. Coming up with your own map and your own encounters would be a neat way to kind of turn it out into its own into its own homebrew world. That is a thing that maybe someday I will feel ambitious enough to work on. I have a couple of ideas. Oh, now that I say that.
I see the wheels turning.
Yeah, I have this great idea for a homebrew fantasy world that I've never committed to a system on. And this might be a really interesting system for it. I don't want to go into too much detail, but maybe I will in the after show or whatever. But it's just an idea I've been kicking around for a fantasy world. But yeah, like I think after we finish this run, and I don't know, we're 40 sessions in. I don't know when we're going to stop playing this game. But I also am not in a rush to get it done.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll be honest, like, because of the scale of the game, in a 2.5 hour session, like, sometimes all we do is travel to a place.
Yeah.
Like, and that's its own adventure. Like, okay, well, like, so my prep sometimes goes like a really long way. Like, I'll do some prep and then I won't have to like do new prep for like 3 sessions or more.
Yeah.
Because I've prepped a couple of like towns that the players are going to. Like I just did this the other day. I prepped like 3 towns with some interesting things. And by the time they go through all 3 towns, I guarantee you I get like 2 to 3 sessions out of that whole thing.
Yeah.
Plus travel.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. I don't know what else to say about it. It's a cool game. I wouldn't have played 40 sessions of it if I wasn't enjoying it.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was our deep dive into Forbidden Lands.
Yeah, if you we hope you learned some things about this. Perhaps you'll have a chance to GM it or play it in the future. I think, if you hear what we're saying and it kind of jives with you, I would imagine you'll probably dig the game. I definitely did.
All right. Now we're going to check in with the chat room one more time before we head into the conversation corner. Chat room's been raptly paying attention to us.
Or not interested in Forbidden Lands. It's hard to...
and chatting with each other. Well, we have the wonderful inclusion of Gator tonight. Gator hasn't been able to make it very often. So
by the way,
here.
Gator's birthday was just a couple days ago, and I know this because that was my my last trip before lockdown was GatorCon.
The last time we saw human beings in a con-like setting before the world went topsy-turvy.
The much cheese had much cheese on that trip.
A bit more cheese?
A bit more cheese? Too much cheese.
I want some curds.
Played some, I played some DCC with Gator.
There you go.
That was fun.
Oh, we miss it. We miss it so much. So yeah, that's what the folks have been doing in the chat room, getting reacquainted with each other and having a good time while we do our thing here. So let's jump into the convo corner and get some of that going here. Where's my... Welcome to the conversation corner. Do.
Oh, so Bob, what happened this weekend?
So we missed a week because we had to bump this off, as we mentioned at the top. But this past Friday we had an awesome game of Dresden Files. A lot of good role playing. Chris did a really nice job of bouncing back and forth between 3 different primary player characters doing 3 different things at the same time. Really good session. Enjoyed the hell out of it.
Some deep soul searching and like comforting and stuff like that as well.
Yep.
It was a good game.
Good times. We had another great session of Forbidden Lands on Sunday, which, as we mentioned earlier, ended with a cliffhanger of a demon trying to take away our druid, which I'm going to tell you right now, when we get to the next session in a couple of Sundays, I'm just going to kick his ass. I'm going to kick his ass. That demon's going down. Nobody takes my druid. That's how this rolls.
I think you guys are going to die laughing when you find out what the magical thing is that triggered this whole needing to cast detect magic. It'll be pretty funny.
It was just a detect magic. That's all it was, and it went horribly wrong.
Well, there was the time that Anildor attempted to heal you and rolled the magical mishap, and the spell did the opposite.
Yep, it was opposite day, and all of a sudden I took a bunch of damage and broke. I went to the Black Gates, or whatever I forget what the equivalent is. Death Spell.
There isn't in that game. I just made up our own Black Gates.
I had a vision of my god. Yeah, it was good. Forbidden Lands, good stuff. Try it out. I finished season 2 of Legend of Korra. A couple episodes into season 3. I did not expect the fallout from season 2 to season 3 that's happening. No spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it. Good time, loving it, loving the steampunk vibe with the airships and stuff. Good times. WandaVision continues to be glorious. So good. We got a trailer during the Super Bowl for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which just makes me so excited because it's coming out on my birthday, March 19th. Woo! If I'm not going out to dinner, at least I'll be watching the Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 1. And then there was a bit of news, which some of you may already know by now because it's been a week, but I was going to use it as a surprise. The Marvel and Disney folks have announced that there will be a Disney Plus series about Wakanda. Mm-hmm. It might even be called Wakanda. I forget now off the top of my head, but there is a supplemental show that is going to be on Disney Plus that is going to be all about Wakanda, not specifically focusing on the Black Panther, but focusing on the country and the technology and their culture. And I think that's an amazing idea.
I'm excited. Did I read it correctly? Is the director from Black Panther going to be He's helping to.
He's the showrunner.
Develop it, but I don't remember. Is he the showrunner?
I think he's the showrunner.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
So
fantastic.
Ryan Coogler, he's involved for sure. So that'll definitely be good. So looking forward to that.
That's exciting. That's going to be very cool.
Yep.
Definitely. I think that covers it for now. Jerry.
Lots of video gaming this weekend, or this whole past week. Matter of fact, with the lackluster Super Bowl, I turned it off about 5 minutes into the third quarter, just went back to playing video games. But I had a really good time. Just got to accomplish a lot of stuff, both on my computer and the TV. We started playing Pandora Total Destruction this week, so I'll be able to give some reviews of that. We're still in character generation and playing on Discord, but looks like it's going to be a good game of super-powered characters slightly out of control. So looking forward to that. Glenn Seiler finished off our Kids on Bike story finale. So we're going to probably pick up that campaign again later on, but our initial story ended, and we decided that starting this week, we're going to switch to Kids on Brooms. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, nice.
And Dresden Accelerated was just amazing. I love learning Fate and actually seeing what I can do. I'm getting a better feeling for how the game works and how to use the various tools. And the story Chris is doing is really in depth. In true Chris fashion, he basically builds a lot on the mistakes and also the comments that we drop. And this last game was full of a lot of angst and pathos and emotional highs and lows, and not just running around, beating stuff with the Fate stick, but also role playing. So it was just a lot of fun, and I look forward to it every time. I'm kind of the odd man out because I've only read 2 of the Dresden Files books, where the GM and the other 2 players are fairly immersed in it. So I'm having a good time kind of learning the world as things go on. And we're basing it in Ithaca, New York, which is right around the corner from where I spent 30 years. So there's a lot of like Central New York cryptid mythos and stuff like that, and just it's been a lot of fun overall. So, all right, Phil, how about you?
Yeah, I'm I finished off the first season of Enterprise and started the second season. That show's growing on me more than I thought it would. So yeah, I think Enterprise hasn't been bad. I mean, all Star Treks get better after their first season. So if that was the first season of Enterprise, yeah, not too bad at all. I'm digging it. WandaVision is fantastic. I love WandaVision and all its weirdness. I could, I'm in no rush to get to the end of it. The episode 5 had a great twist. That was amazing. It also had a great teaser in the beginning of it if you paid very close attention. And it, again, no spoilers, had a great nod to what I think, something that's going to happen. So that was very good. Played some Numenera the week before. Yeah, I am still resolving my feelings about Numenera. I know my players love this game. I don't not love it, but as a GM, is not a very exciting game to GM. I will go on to say that I think there are some people who might have some feels about it, but like there's not a lot of stuff for you to do as a GM in a Cypher system game. And I get why that's a really good idea for newer GMs. Like, I think it's a brilliant idea for making a game for people to learn to GM, because I think it helps you focus so much on story and not so much on mechanics. But for me, I'm a little bored running the system. And not bored like I am running Savage Worlds, where I'm like, well, I've seen basically all these mechanics already. There's literally no mechanics for me in this game. Like, I pick difficulty numbers. I mean, that's what I do. I pick difficulty numbers. And I tell a story. And I don't mind that. That's okay. But, like, there's not much for me to latch onto. Like, in Forbidden Worlds, I get to roll some dice. And we're going to play... and in DCC, I roll dice. And when we get to... the sprawl, I'll get to do all the cool PBTA GME things that I normally get to do, but I don't know. I don't know. We're gonna wind up having a talk about it because I'm getting fidgety. Like, I like the Numenera setting, but I'm really like I'm starving on the other end of
Give me something to do.
The game is built so that players have way more to do in the game mechanically than GMs do. And I don't know, as a more experienced GM, I'm kind of like, difficulty 5. Excellent. Intrusion.
If only there was like a drop-in module you could add to Numenera where the GM could take back some control and do some stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
I had fun with Numenera playing it, but there was something about it that just never hooked me either. It was one of those things where it looked like it'd be fun to play as a couple of one shots.
Oh no! I mean, it's a delicious game. Like, don't get me wrong. Yeah. Like the setting is evocative as hell, and like the kind of stories you can tell with it are pretty wide and varied. And again, like I think it's brilliant for getting newer GMs to play. You know how, like, we always talk about, like, there's 8 skills a GM has to juggle at all times when they're running a game. Like, in Cypher, it's like 6. Like, there's not a lot you have to do in Cypher as a GM. Everything's player facing. I could go into it. Maybe we'll go into it in the after show. Anyway, playing some Numenera. I'm writing my own hack for the sprawl. So the sprawl is basically like the quintessential do a job for corporations version of Cyberpunk. And I'm so not into doing jobs for corporations right now. So I've been hacking the rules so that you can play a leverage style game using these
stick
rules.
It to the man.
Yeah, so you can either choose to do a job for some like normal people who need help, or I've come up with a way to start the game off where you can just choose a target and just do your own job. Like, you can just be like, well, I think we need to take a chunk out of Miltech.
Yeah.
And not have to go get a contract to do that. So, and because I can't resist, I hacked my own rules from H2O, as well as from Underground, which is where I got the inspiration for H2O. And I have a thing for how to actually improve your city. So you can now do jobs to actually make your city a better place.
Nice.
So I'm writing it up. It doesn't drastically change the game. It changes the beginning and the end of the game. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to play test it through my Thursday group. But I think it's pretty sound. Like, it's not a radical change to the game. The game is actually pretty much the same. It just changes how you get jobs and what happens after you get a job. And it basically affects 2 moves in the game. I didn't think that was terrible. So
no,
I think it'll be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
I got to finish writing it up, and then I'll share it out with you guys. So I've been working on that as well. And then I won't go into super detail, but I've been teaching myself to draw. On the side, mostly doodling, not very fancy drawings, but you got to learn somewhere. So
yep.
I'm learning to make some simple things, like messing around with my Apple Pencil and doing like some drawing programs and doing some stuff there. Yeah, I don't know. Like, those are pretty good things.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to tune up a few of my games. Like, we're closing out DCC to start playing the Sprawl. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to wind up having a talk soon about Numenera. Like, yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with the game. I think I'm not enjoying it. I think you guys are having a plenty fun time with it, but I'm just like, there's nothing for me to do during the game. So, yeah, we'll get to talking about it anyway. It's probably a good place to wrap up. We should probably do some shout outs. We're going to hit the after show for a shortened after show because we are doing our DS9 documentary at 10:30. So it's coming up on 10 now. We're going to hit the after show for a little bit to say hi, and then we're going to pack up and head upstairs.
All right.
I'm going to head upstairs. The rest of you don't have to head upstairs, but I'm freezing my ass off right now. So I also would like to head upstairs.
Okay.
All right, so there. I don't know if you noticed the Patreon shout-outs, Phil. There's one for you.
Yeah, I see it. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you for being our patrons, Brantley Harris,
Chris Steele,
Chromatic Chameleon, Cubano, Curtis Y. Takahashi, Eric Mengi, JT Evans, Jared Rasher, Jen Pixelscapes Gagney, and Jim Fitzpatrick. Thank you for patronizing us. Is that right? Patronizing? Being our patrons.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone for listening tonight.
If you're free on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's Time, come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with the other awesome listeners in the chat room for life, or ask us the occasional question.
If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week, wherever you get your podcast. And take a listen to some of our other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Mastering Dungeons, Bone Stone Obsidian, the FM Gamers, Panis Talking Games, the Gnome Cat, Jangu Hustle, The Lounge, Bonus Experience, and back episodes of She's a Super Geek. You can and should also check out our sibling podcast, Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming MBS, where you can hear Phil in the most recent episode.
Gaming MPS.
Gaming MPS, yes.
All right. Before you make your quartermaster roll and camp for the night, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via email at mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Hit us up on Twitter. The show in the network is @misdirectedmark. He is Robert M. Everson. He is GM Gerrymander, and I am DNA Phil.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Mastering Dungeons, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. Zhengu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhengu Hustle, and Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Mastering Dungeons, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Bamboo Lounge, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out.